Hey guys, Mick here. Thanks for checking out the lesson. Today's lesson we're going to talk about jumping. So this is the really common thing. Lots of people love to get some airtime on their bikes, and so we're going to just talk about the best way to do it. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions with jumping, and you'll see in a lot of online advice and a lot of tutorials where they really focus on bunny hop. And the reality is you don't need to be able to bunny hop to be able to jump. There's a lot of really complicated techniques out there, but at the end of the day, in a lot of cases, it's just making something unnecessarily complicated. So what we're going to do is step back to some really basic technique that's going to get you into the air smoothly and safely. So one of the first things to think about when you're jumping is obviously where you're going to learn. You need a jump to start on. Where we're using here at the moment is probably the ideal place to start and learn how to jump. And the reason for that is we've got a nice smooth transition. So your bike comes up here nice and even, it's not too short, it's not too steep, and we're just jumping to flat. Now obviously this is a great way to do it because you don't have to worry about clearing anything, you don't have to worry about sort of landing on a downslope or anything like that. It just lets you get in the air. And the key to jumping is getting into the air smoothly. So if you can find somewhere like this, it's an ideal place to learn how to jump so that you can work on that takeoff and get yourself in the air nice and smoothly to start with. So, where most people have their problem with jumping, that when you watch, is they'll come up off the jump, the front wheel will kind of go along that way, and the back will kick in the air. Really, really common. You see it happening all the time. People come over the jump, the back of their bike's high. Now, that is, apart from the fact that it's kind of scary, you run the risk of nosediving, going over the handlebars. And what it is basically the takeoff creating rotation in you and your bike. And that's what we're going to try and avoid today. So the idea is to get yourself into the air nice and smoothly, so you're still centered on the bike, and the bike doesn't have any rotation that was put in there by the actual jump. So it comes back to your ability to control it and keep it nice and smooth. Once you can take off nice and smoothly like this, then it lets you can build your speed up, you can jump a bit further, jump a bit higher, which is why a situation like this is really ideal. And then once you've got that dialed, you can start taking it onto tabletops and gaps and other sorts of jumps down the track. The key thing we want to look at is how do we get the bike in the air so that the front's coming up nice and smoothly, the back's following it up the hill, follows it into the air, and the bike flies into the air nice and flat and smooth, and you can stay centered on it. And the way we're going to do this is it's all in the legs. So basically what you're going to do is as you come into the transition, you're going to compress your legs, compress the suspension of the bike, and as it comes up, just relax up and let the bike absorb up into you. So really, really simple technique. If you want to go higher and further, you simply go faster. So basically what I'm going to do as I come into this jump, I'm going to ride up to it here, and as I come into the transition, I'm going to compress my legs, push the bike down, and then as it comes up off the top, I'm just going to unweight myself and let the bike absorb up into me. Okay, nice and simple to do. Now you notice from this example, I'm coming in nice and slow. I'm not trying to jump particularly high. I'm not trying to do anything fancy. All I'm doing is cruising in, compressing my legs, letting myself come up and letting the bike absorb up as I come off the top of the jump. And you'll notice that the front wheel is coming up and the bike's coming up nice and evenly. Now, one of the things that we find that helps, and it's not necessarily great technique, but if you're in a position like we are where you're quite often teaching on really short steep jumps that are very, very pitchy, I find that if you go really slow on them, so you want to start out really slow, I find it's actually sometimes hard to get that compression and have the back not kick up still on a really short takeoff. So the way we often do that to start with is to get people to come in and do a front wheel lift. So it's compress your legs and jump that front up a bit. Now you only want to do this while your first few runs while you're going nice and slow, so you can get the feel of lifting the front up. Once you start to build up some speed, you don't need to be doing a front wheel lift. So it's all about that compress and absorb up. Now you should be able to see the difference between those two demos. Like I say, that's not really correct technique, but if you're on a really dodgy little jump that's quite kind of steep and you want to do it slowly, you might find that helps you. Okay, so now you've got that started, what's the progression? The trick is to gradually increase your speed. So this is entirely up to you as to how many steps you want to take between going nice and slowly and picking up the speed. As you go faster, the amount of compress you need and the timing is a little bit different. So if you take nice easy steps, you'll get the feel of it, and each time you can progress, get the feel of where you need to be compressing, get the feel of where the bike's lifting, and you're aiming for that really even lift where the bike's just coming up off the ground nice and smoothly and you're not in an awkward position in the air. It means you'll also see from my landings that the bike's landing both wheels at about the same time. It's nice and even, my weight's centrally distributed so that both suspension works at the same time. And that's the key to being smooth. So the trick is to find yourself something like this and try it a number of times till you start to get really smooth on it. So once you've got your takeoffs dialed on a simple up jump, then the next step is to take it onto a tabletop. Now the advantage of tabletops is it's kind of like where you were before, where you can take it easy, you can get a feel of the transition, you can jump up onto the top of the jump, and then you can gradually increase your speed till you're going to the landing. This one where we are now, the takeoff's a little bit steep, so it's not ideal to learn on, but the nice thing about it is it's got a fair bit of size across the top and a nice round off for the downslope. So it's not particularly aggressive on the landing, so if you come up short or if you over jump it, you've got a fair bit of leeway in where you actually have to land. Now these jumps here are actually a set of 3, so I'm on the last one of the 3. When you're jumping jumps where you've got multiple in a line, it's always a good idea to get the last one dialed first. And so you can often do that by rolling through the first couple and then jumping the last one. Now the reason for that is if you mess up the first one, then your day's going to get a whole lot worse as you come down the line. The other thing is, it gives you, you know how to jump the last one, and you know the speed that you need and the compression and everything's going to work, then you can make sure that as you come out of the second one, that your speed and everything's right. So these jumps used to be a little bit shorter than what they are now, and you actually had to brake. If you cleared the second one, you had to brake before you went into the third one, or you'd over jump it. So it's a good idea to have that last one dialed, then do the one before it and know what speed and what you need to be doing, and then do the first one. And then you get to the stage where you can put them all together and jump all 3. So on this one, the same thing. The only difference is because it's a tabletop, you're actually landing on a downslope. And what that means is you don't want to be rotating off the takeoff so that the bike's just going into an arc onto the down landing, because once you do it for a particular jump size, if you go bigger, you're likely to be over rotating. So ideally you want to be taking off, you want to be nice and flat and smooth and controlled in the air. Then as you're coming over the landing, you can actually extend your arms a little bit. So the bike's sort of coming over here, and as I come over the landing, I can extend my arms a bit and put the front down. And what that means is I'm in a lot more control of the rotation of the bike than if I'm just letting it buck off the start. And we see a lot of people out on small tabletops where they'll take off, but the rotation is caused by the takeoff and they kind of land on the landing. And it's a little bit more coincidence rather than control. And the problem with that is when they start hitting bigger things, they end up over rotating, and that's where you run the risk of coming in nose first and going over the handlebars. In this example, we're just going to hit the tabletop here. Now your first couple of runs in, you really want to feel the transition just like you did on the previous jump, and take it nice and easy. Get the feel of where you've got to compress, where you can let it come up to you and float across the jump. If you don't make it across, it doesn't really matter. The idea is to get the takeoff really dialed. What you'll see with this example is when the takeoff's nice and smooth, I can flow through the air, over the center of the jump. I'm still pretty stable and centered on the bike. And then when I'm landing, I can sort of extend my arms a little bit. The wheels go down nice and evenly. Suspension absorbs most of the work and even a little bit in my legs if I need to. And it's really, really smooth. What you'll find is when you do this, it doesn't feel like you're in the air. And I think that's because a lot of people, the feeling of being in the air is fighting with the bike. When you're smooth with it, the bike will just float over it, nice and relaxed, and it should be nice and smooth. So yeah, go find yourself a piece of trail, guys. Ideally, if you've got something nice and easy to learn on, it's a great approach. Get out there, have a little bit of a play with it, and take it in nice small steps, and you should be able to safely and competently learn to get yourself off the ground. The next step up from this is doing gaps and things, and we'll do that in a future video, just the differences in that. The fundamental technique's pretty similar. So yeah, have a play with this one, get yourself comfortable, and we'll see you in the next video or out on the trail somewhere.